Hi, thanks for joining us today. This is Live at Noon with Dee Dee Jones, Money Mastery with Dee Dee. And today we have a special guest, Liz Weston. She's a journalist that I've known for so many years. She's currently writing with NerdWallet, and she writes about all things personal finance. Of course, I'm a groupie. And I'm so excited she could join us today. How are you doing today, Liz?
I'm great. It's great to be here, Dee Dee.
Yeah, so recently, Liz and I was able to be a source for one of her articles. Hopefully I've got the phrasing on that correct. I don't live in the world of journalism. And we were talking about how to get your house ready for retirement. But, if you go Google Liz Weston's name, you'll see she writes on a huge, vast range of personal finance topics. I'm sort of curious. I know you're a CFP. How did you end up or are you still an active CFP, or do you focus just on journalism these days?
I've always been a journalist.
Yes,
I've never actually practiced as a financial planner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I constantly get questions from people saying, "Will you be my financial planner?" And it says, "No."
Yeah. No. Stay back. Yeah.
Well, you know that when you are an advisor, you get ignored a lot. People will come to you after the fact and say, "Did I do the right thing?" Or you'll give them great advice and they'll just ignore it. The nice thing about being a journalist is I'll never know if you ignore me.
Oh,
so
and power to you if you do. It's all good.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, we can only help the people who want help, not necessarily the people who need help.
Yeah.
That's a huge bit of wisdom in my world. So when did you pick up the personal finance pen, so to speak?
Oh my goodness, a long time ago. I want to say 1992. So it was a really good time to start getting interested in personal finance because, the whole 401k thing was just getting started pretty much.
Yes.
And people were having to deal with a lot more in terms of, there was a credit explosion in terms of availability of credit. So people had lots of questions, and it was just a really good time to start writing about it.
The beginning of the era as homes as ATMs, right?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know if you remember this, Dee Dee, but people had to be talked into that. There was a real resistance to tapping your home equity for anything. And the banks had to come at everybody with all this advertising saying, "Here's all this free money, take it." And then,
Yes.
Kind of that boomeranged on them a bit, I think.
Yeah, funny that. Yeah, well, it makes me the bank money for now. I'm not going to worry about 10 years from now, right?
Yeah.
Not all of our institutions think that far ahead.
Unfortunately.
Not as far ahead as I wish they would, but
yes,
that's why I'm a planner. That's my jam.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. What were you doing before you were doing this?
I covered a lot of different things. I was covering politics for quite a while. That was immediately before I went into this. I was a feature writer for a while. I was in the business section for another paper. So I tried a bunch of different things, but I always knew at the back of my mind that business and specifically personal finance was the area where I could make the most impact. And it was something that was the most interesting to me.
Well, I am serious. I've read your articles for many, many years and had the pleasure of being a source for you a handful of times over the years. And so it's been really fun. I mean, as a financial advisor, to be able to be a source for someone who's putting out such great information, it's really an honor to be part of that. And it helps us get the word out that much more. It's like, guys, it's really good.
You've been so responsive. And I think that's something, if there's any other financial planners listening, the getting back to a journalist quickly is key. We're always on deadline. We've always waited too long to get our sources. So somebody that's willing to come back and you tell good stories. And that's the other good thing is it's so important to tell a good story because that's how people learn. I can give them all the facts, for days, but one story can get the message across so much better than a bunch of dry statistics.
I agree. I think we live in a storytelling world. Hey, we've got a question from someone who's watching, and that's a favorite financial topic or audience. What's fun for you?
Oh, just about everything. The two areas I'm not real keen on are taxes and like active investing, because I don't believe in active investing. I think it's a huge waste of money. And then taxes, just because it changes all the time. And
it's getting worse and worse.
Exactly. And one wrong word can completely throw you off. One of the best things that I had early in my career was a bunch of very attentive CPAs. And if I wrote about taxes and I had a single word wrong, I would hear from all of them, in the whole county.
That's kind of cute. Yay!
It was good for me, but it also made me a little gun shy. But
Yeah.
I love, actually, the weird thing, which I didn't expect, is I love writing about Social Security. I thought that was the most boring topic when I was younger. I had no idea how complicated it was. I had
It's
no idea
crazy.
how many people have, misconceptions about it, as you know.
Yeah.
And it's so important, especially for women, to make the right
its history is
decisions.
fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like writing as a general rule. It's just not my favorite form. But I did do my high school research paper was on Social Security.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
Oh my gosh.
Those poor teachers. I'm so sorry. I tortured them having to read whatever that was.
What interested you in that at that age?
I have no idea. Because that was many years before I considered being a CFP. But yeah, that probably was the last time I wrote on Social Security in that context. That's for sure. But it's totally interesting. So what have you learned about Social Security that has surprised you?
Oh, just because it's so complicated. That blows me away, because this is something that was designed for everyone. It's not a safety net necessarily. I mean, it was meant to keep the poorest elderly people out of poverty, definitely. But it was set up from the beginning to benefit everyone. And I think the people who created it were smart that way, because it's easy to take away a benefit for other people.
Yes.
But if everybody gets it,
does that sound like a stimulus? Just a thought.
Everybody loves getting money, man.
They do, yeah. Well, and I love some of the things that are baked into the system. Spousal benefits. You get married for 10 years and then you divorce. Then that spouse has access to your half of your benefits.
Yeah.
You can be a serial monogamist and have 3, 4, 5, 6 if you're really very, very efficient at it. People drawing on a single account, which I love that protection is there.
Yeah.
For the former wives, but I think people forget that's how it works.
There's millions of children as well. Survivor benefits and some child benefits, but that I had a friend in high school whose father died prematurely, obviously, and they had a huge family. I think there were like 6 kids, and the mom was able to continue getting care benefits until the oldest turned 16, and then he got it for another couple of years. So that whole family was tided over by that. Oh yeah,
and we all know stories like that. Of it saves you. You don't hit rock bottom. It isn't luxurious. Nowhere. I would never pretend that that's the case, but you're not hitting rock bottom. That's what it was designed to do.
Yeah. Hang on just a second. I think I've got an unstable connection here.
Okay.
Trying to fix that.
Live things. You never know. The cat walks by, the phone rings.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I think this is as good as it's going to get. So anyway,
we'll go with what we got, right?
Okay.
Can't affect that. So yes, and then they go and change rules on Social Security too. So when they changed the file and suspend rules a couple of years ago, that was really disappointing. I was planning on doing that one, but oh well.
My doctor managed to get in on that. He's now he's getting a spousal benefit. Yeah, he was the right age to do it. But that was the kind of thing that the people who knew about it were the people like us who were more informed. And I think Congress just saw that as a huge loophole, so they shut it up.
Well, and it was only being used by the wealthy.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
I'm told that the connection issue is on my side, not yours. Which, all things considered, it's Xfinity high-speed broadband. Not a very positive plug, Xfinity high-speed broadband.
Get your act together, guys.
Pretty much.
But I think the reason that Social Security fascinates me so much is because it makes such a big difference, particularly for women. We tend to live longer.
Yeah.
We have much more risk of outliving our assets. And unfortunately, though, a lot of times it's the husbands making the decision, and they're not necessarily thinking about their wives, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They're thinking about themselves, and they don't even think about the survivor benefit.
Well, you're familiar with ERISA then. So before ERISA was around, husbands could unilaterally make choices on pensions, not Social Security. And they would make, and I have a close family situation where the husband said, I'm just going to get the one with the highest benefit. A number of years later, he passed and impoverished his surviving wife because that pension was the big source of the income for that household.
Yeah.
At the time, that's what made sense. They didn't really understand the implications. And so ERISA did some good things in that respect.
Yeah, definitely. And this is why people need to talk to advisors, because you've never retired before, you've never been through this, but
You
an
get,
advisor has been through this
yes.
many, many, many times. They know the questions to ask.
Right. Yeah. I can't, it's all the time people go, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. Well, of course not. Why would you? That, whatever it is you do, I have no idea what it is. I don't know how to change a faucet, for heaven's sake, whatever it might be.
But this stuff, and you can walk them through it. And the other thing is the decisions can be incredibly impactful and they can be irreversible. As you know, it's like once you've made a mistake, you might not be able to fix it. So to me, it's just so worth spending the money, getting a consultation with an advisor, a fiduciary. Put your interest first, kind of advisor.
I love that fiduciary word. Yeah. Well, and the valuable thing is people start to hear about some of these concepts through the media. If somebody has a question, maybe they're not ready to be a client yet, having a resource like you and out at NerdWallet, we could say, well, read some articles because that's relevant for right now. When you're ready to approach it in a more personal way, we're here.
Yeah.
But you can't, it's like the banks and the financing, people have to get used to the idea that whatever it is, fill in the blank, is there, and we get slowly educate them. We can't all drink it at once. No fire hoses here. So that's what's so valuable about having great financial reporters out there, financial journalists. So you're not doing any exposés these days, are you?
No, I don't do a lot of investigative reporting anymore. But there's enough things going on out there. My colleague Bev O'Shea is writing now about scams. So anybody who hasn't already signed up for AARP's Fraud Watch, and then keep an eye out for Bev's columns, because the scams are constantly evolving. And the one that just came up personally in our family was Zelle. And Zelle is the payment system that's created by the banks, which sounds great. But what happened to her was somebody imitated a friend of hers, basically got a hold of his email address and convinced her to send a bunch of money. And the thing is, I'm checking this out to make 100% sure, but because she authorized the transfers, I don't think she can get her money back.
Yeah, probably
and
not.
That is just terrifying.
Right.
You think that you're basically putting money in somebody's pocket and you think it's a friend, but it's not. So
give me a credit card any day.
Yeah, when possible, that's the way to go. It's
Absolutely.
just so many more protections to that.
Right. Yeah. Even over debit cards.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway. Yep. So you've been doing this, 90, 91, you got into this. What kind of changes have you seen in what people want to learn about, or maybe what do you wish people would want to learn about that they won't listen to?
The changes are interesting. For a big chunk of the 90s, nobody knew what a credit score was. They were actually designed only for lenders, and they were meant to be a secret. You weren't even meant to know that you had one.
Wow, yeah.
So when that started to change around the turn of the century, I was getting a ton of questions about that. I wound up writing a book about it called Your Credit Score.
Yes.
And then there was the mortgage thing, and we saw a lot of questions. I got a question from a reader, and I want to say it was like late 2006, and he said, hey, my bank just shut off my home equity line of credit. They just froze it. And at the time, I'd never heard of such a thing. So I sent a message out to all my financial planner friends. You ever heard them like this? No, we never heard anybody's. What? Got frozen? And then, of course, that was just the beginning of this tsunami of people, getting their credit lines frozen and all kinds of other things. So it's interesting because sometimes you get a little bit of you can see what's going to come just by what people are asking about. And right now, I mentioned Social Security. I never wanted to get involved with it. I never wanted to write about it. I answered one reader question, and I got a ton of emails, and I could do 80%, 90% of my columns just about Social Security and never run out of either questions to answer or topics. So that's a big one these days.
Yes. What is it? Kotlikoff. He's written one of those books on Social Security, and it is so dense if you try and read that stuff. I know he tries to write it for normal people, but it's just well, the whole Social Security legislation, by the time it's this many pages, and it cross-references, and it's crazy. But but people, my goal, don't leave money on the table if you can help it.
Maximize it if you possibly can. And I think, the research, people ask me all the time, they say, I think I should start it early, and here's my spreadsheet showing you why. I have on a template about 20 pieces of research showing that most people are better off waiting. And it takes into account the present value of money. It takes into account tax rates. It takes into account the survivor benefit, all this research. And I just fire it back. It's like, if you can read all this research and still think that you're better off taking it early, still go talk to an advisor. But
the easier way I've done that is, how long do you think you're going to live? Because if you're going to live past 85, you need to wait. If you think you're going to die sooner, then maybe you're right. And nobody wants to admit that they might die sooner. And
sometimes people do underestimate their life expectancies. But again, if they're not thinking about their spouse, a lot of times the spouse outlives them, not just by years, sometimes by decades.
Decades. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I just find that fear of mortality, is a quicker, because I agree. Your research, I'm sure, is spot on.
Well, and here's the other piece of it is that people are talking about, I'm worried I'm not going to get the maximum out if I don't start it early. And it's like, well, if you die, you're not going to care. The only person that's going to care is your survivor. So once again, if you are the primary earner, putting it off is probably the best choice.
Yeah, no, and that's an uphill battle because we have baked into society a retirement age of 65.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we all think, which that I think is a disservice in a lot of ways. I'm sure you see that. There's, if you're in a manual trade, if you're swinging a hammer or you're a massage therapist or whatever, you may not make it to 65. That's just hard on your body. So you need to plan differently.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody who sits in a desk all the time, work until 70. Not such a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So. And if you love what you do, it's not a big deal to keep going. If you hate it, it's going to be tough to keep people occupied or keep them in the job.
But having that set point, that psychological, set point of 65, hard to get people away from and think that there's anything different.
Yeah. How do you talk to people about that decision about when to retire? Assuming that the money is fine either way.
Oh, well, I have somebody who last week sent me an email asking me for a kick in the head because he's having trouble pulling the trigger on retiring. And it makes me chuckle because it can be hard. It's such an emotional event, right? It's not a flip of a switch. It's a process. Mm-hmm. How do you think about it? And so that's what we try and walk them through. Remind them that first of all, it's not irreversible. Most people can retire, and if they hate it, they can actually go back to work in one way or another. So that takes, it's not like some of those, if you turn on the annuity, that's it. It's on and you can't undo it. This is one of those where there's some ish. There's also ways of saying, and historically, it's mostly been men that have been resistant to retiring because that's really tied up in their identity. Women have had the luxury or annoyance of having to wear more hats through our adult lives. So it's a little easier in that transition, although I kind of think that's going to change coming up. But we can talk about, what will give them meaning after retirement. So think, visualizing what retirement's going to look like, and practicing, can you take an extended leave or a sabbatical year? Try it on for size, dip your toe in that water. What does that look like? So there's, a lot of it depends on who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. When do you think you'll retire, Liz?
That's a really good question. And I'm not entirely sure. My husband's 10 years older than I am. So he's already in semi-retirement. And I think, when we are able to travel more freely, right, we will. But I can work from anywhere. I was
going to say, the ultimate, pandemic job right there. You've probably been working from home quite a bit over the years. Yeah.
Since 2002, full time.
2003 for me. How fun. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, once you have this lifestyle, it's really hard to go back to actually going to the office.
Yeah. No, definitely there. Yeah. So are you working with your husband about what that transition into retirement might look like for the two of you?
Yeah, we're talking about it a lot. Now, I love what I do. I can do it from anywhere. NerdWallet is a great employer.
Yes.
So I don't see myself pulling the plug anytime soon. But I do see, especially those of us with big age gaps or on the larger side, we don't have an infinite amount of time to enjoy good health and good energy. So that's something I'm trying to keep top of mind that, I don't want to put this off till we're both in the hospital or, both in walkers. So
yeah. And that's one of the bigger regrets. Sometimes I'll have clients who push off, push off, push off. And then all of a sudden somebody gets a health diagnosis that just torpedoes everything. And it's really sad.
Yeah.
I had clients who I tried every year to get them to do the travels. They had resources to allow them to travel, kind of, not unlimited, of course, but, go to China. You wanted to go to China. And then just as they're about to do it, one of them fell ill and died within about 18 months. And it was a double tragedy because not only did she lose her spouse, but they lost the experiences that they were both looking forward to.
Yes.
Really, really difficult for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing these were people that were good savers. So switching that from saving to spending can be a
always
challenge.
difficult. Yeah, they were 2 retired school teachers with no kids. And
Oh,
so they had been diligent savers all these years. They just really near and dear to my heart. Heartbreaking to see that happen because they were ready to do these great things. So, and then the opportunity got away from them. So yes, all of you out there, be sure to plan in some fun along the way. Don't put all of it to the end, but don't do it all at the beginning. Bit by bit, folks, balance it out.
Balance. Oh, balance is like something that I think is something we have to talk about a lot because I think you run into this too, where people want to do one thing at a time. Like they want to get their student loans paid off before they start saving for retirement. And we have to tell them you have to multitask. We know you can't multitask when you're working, but you really have to multitask with personal finance because the thing you've got going for you when you're young is time. Getting that money to grow, and but you have to be investing it, have to be in the market for it to get that growth.
And saving for the house at the same time too.
Yes, and emergencies and all these other things. And it's frustrating because you can't get to your goal as fast as you would if you just, single tasked it, but you're giving up too much by doing that. You really got to do everything at once.
That is such a common question of what do I do first? Do I save for a house or I pay off the school loan? Well, you do both.
Yeah.
And you do both based on what your resources are available to you, of course.
Yes, exactly.
So those folks starting out early in their careers really have to think more about cash flow than I think a lot of us did at that age, or not, more than we should have done as well. It would have served us well. They're being forced into it in a much bigger way, I think.
Well, and education is so much more expensive than when I went through college. I think I was the last person to get out of college without student loans. And I went to a small, private, expensive college. So
they had scholarships back when I went.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Or you could work a summer and have enough saved up to pay tuition at the state school.
That's the other thing. I hear from people in their 70s and 80s saying, why don't kids work their way through college like they used to? It's like, because they can't. There aren't jobs that will pay enough to do that.
Right. So once that got out of whack, I think that's kind of when higher education went off the rails.
Yeah, unfortunately. And we took a sabbatical, I want to say it was 2014, and went to Europe for 9 weeks. And we went to a bunch of different countries. Every country I asked them, okay, how do you guys handle college? Every single one of them, the one exception was Sweden, but they all have some free college option. And student loans are not a big deal. I mean, they just aren't. The exception is Sweden, and it's because of a cultural thing. In Sweden, once you turn 18, you are on your own. Culturally, you are expected to take care of yourself. So they're the ones that have student loan issues because they're borrowing money to live on, not necessarily to pay for their education.
Well, I'll be darned. Okay, that's different. I feel like they've influenced the U.S. somehow. Fierce individualism there, right?
Well, there's that, but there's also, the Scandinavian countries are they're like the original democracy. They're very egalitarian. So it's kind of interesting that Sweden is different in that way because the rest of the Scandinavian countries, it's all about, it's more about making communal decisions kind of a thing. So I'm not sure why that particular, why that's become an issue in Sweden and not elsewhere, but there you go.
It's hard. Yeah. Figure it out. Then you'll make the millions of dollars on that one. That would be really clever to know. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So what in your questions that you're getting now, what you mentioned earlier that sometimes you get questions of what maybe is coming down the pike. Any ideas of what we should be looking at going forward?
Well, I think everybody's looking forward to the after times and what will happen. And one of the things that comes up a lot is, people spending change profoundly in a lot of cases. As some people obviously lost their jobs, they have huge amounts of rent debt.
Oh,
I think, unfortunately, evictions are going to be coming roaring back.
yeah.
And the money that's been allocated to help them is getting out, but very slowly. And it's not everyone that's going to get it.
Well, and the flip side of that is the small investors who own those houses where the people can pay rent. I mean, there's a bit of and I haven't heard much discussion on that. Not to interrupt you, but I think it's just an extension.
Yeah, because people get those, the mom and pop landlords, this was supposed to be supplementing their income, or is their income, or it's retirement, all these different things. And nobody predicted, nobody could predict that this was going to happen. Yeah. So, it's a big question mark. I think that obviously the bigger landlords are going to be fine, but it's the small ones which you got to be concerned about. Now, that said, if anybody's in that situation, the way the money is being doled out, the landlords and the tenants need to work together.
Yes.
So if somebody's in that situation, you look for emergency rental assistance program for your state, your city, your county, whatever. The money is starting to be available. So that's something to look at.
Yes, but there's a depth of need that the resources won't be able to meet all of it. So timely, get together, work together, and do it soon.
The issue with the tenants is that once you have an eviction on your record, you are just screwed for so long. It is so hard to get a decent place to rent after that, because all the landlords, obviously, they do the tenant screening.
Yeah.
And if you've got, in some states, it's even if the landlord starts the process.
Oh,
that's not true in California. California has a masking statute. So, if the tenant wins the issue, or if the, gets current or whatever, nobody ever knows about it. But with other states, even the filing of a eviction, starting the procedure, can be a problem. And that's why you see such concern about, this wave of homelessness, because what people do if they are evicted is they, try to find another place. They can't, they have to settle for substandard housing, or they move in with another family, and there's a lot of crowding going on. That's the whole reason why the CDC wanted to keep evictions, on hold for a while, but that can't last forever.
Right. Besides the contagions when you're crowding people, et cetera. Yeah. So
there was a UCLA researcher that she actually calculated the excess deaths that happened because of the summer evictions that happened.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because the eviction, I think the order went in September or something like that, and she looked at the period. It was a bunch of researchers, and there were a substantial number of infections and deaths that could be traced to those evictions, which is just scary.
And you don't think about it. If that's not part of your world, you don't consider that disease is related to housing.
Yeah. There's a wonderful book called Evicted that looked at the low-income situation in Milwaukee, and it's just a deep dive. And I come from a middle-class family. Nobody I'd ever known had ever been evicted. So to me, it was like a whole new world, looking at what this is and what happens and why housing instability exists in the first place. So it was a really eye-opening look into that part of the economy that I just wouldn't have come across otherwise.
So if you had your magic wand, how would you fix this housing issue?
Oh, I don't know, because it's so complicated and it's so different. And I also, I have friends who are landlords and who have to deal with nightmare tenants. So there's also that side of it. Yeah. It's not just, nice people who can't pay their rent. It's also people taking advantage of the situation. So I don't know. I don't. Do you have a magic wand? Do you have a solution to it?
I don't. That's why I asked you, because it's, you sit around and you think, and it's like following the thread back up, and you go, it just goes so many places. I don't even know where to begin. You throw up your hands and go, well, someone else will figure it out, because I don't even know what to do. Is there one charity? Well, then charity screws up the economic system. You end up wrapped around the axle.
Yeah, it happens really quickly. And, I was a landlord for about 3 months while we were selling a house. I will never do it again.
My parents were landlords when I was growing up, and I have horror stories of things that happened. the pot plants of the college kids, which nowadays is like, well, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But I was a little kid. A suicide that was in one of them, heart-wrenching, horrible things, but you're stuck dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be all sorts of bad actors. And I was too little to know if there were money elements, but I do remember going into one house once that the entire basement floor normally had white tile, white speckly 1964 tile. It was all black. I'm like, what is this? Covered in roly-polies. Dead. Yeah. So really, I've never been interested in being a landlord because of those. And I think people think being a landlord's easy. It's really favored in our culture and in our tax law, which is part of the surprise for all those mom and pop landlords, because everything's been such smooth sailing. It feels like a no-brainer way to make money. They don't see the risk because we've padded the risk, if you will, but it's there. Yeah.
And that's something else that the pandemic did, is expose some of that, because we can talk to people all day long about why you need diversification, and people know real estate. They think they understand it. So
I can touch it. Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but you know, I don't know that anybody could have predicted the pandemic, but we can predict from a long history that you're better off being diversified. And if you have some real estate, also have some stocks.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yeah. Part of my career, I was controller for Coldwell Banker here in Denver and dealt with 300 real estate agents and got it right between the eyes on people who are so focused on what they do that it's really hard to see past that. These people would own 2, 3, 4, 5 properties. They made their living in real estate. And then something like 2008 comes along and they're in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
I couldn't go fix it for them, but it sure makes a great story.
Yeah. Well, and before 2008, the idea that the whole nation would face a devaluation of real estate was
considered impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, that hadn't happened since the Depression. It wasn't going to happen again, and we saw that it did. So again, diversification. If you do want to have real estate, don't have it all in one place.
Right. And understand your risks. I've got 5 different properties. I'm diversified. Well, 3 are on the same block. You're not diversified. Yeah. They're all, So, maybe one here, one in Tucson, and an apartment building somewhere else, or own a REIT. If you really love real estate, there's other ways to get exposure to that.
Yes, exactly. And the REIT will not call you in the middle of the night when something breaks. Right.
Yeah. So that is one thing over the years that I've collected good property managers in my, my toolbox of people that I tap when I have clients who need help. And because a good property manager can make that experience so much better.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to make those decisions or deal with leaky toilets and blown out water heaters. Yes. You did it for 3 months. Did you have any of those midnight calls?
No. And I can't say too much about this because it was, we actually rented to a friend and I thought it would be fine. And it was definitely not. So it hurt the friendship. It hurt the, it made me probably be a little too eager to sell a place. I probably could have gotten a better price if I just hung on, but it was so desperate to get out of the situation. It was like, and this was a house in Laguna Beach, which I would kill to have back.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Laguna was a wonderful
you looked at
place.
Zillow and went, oh, I could own this. I could be worth it. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. We sold it for $475,000. It just changed hands for $2.4 million.
Oh my gosh.
So this is in 20 years. So
but still, Oh, but you love where you live now and it's all worked out. And
that's what I have to remind myself is we have this wonderful, and we didn't think about retirement when we bought this property, and it's perfect for retirement. It's all one level. It's in a great walkable neighborhood.
Oh, good.
We have excellent health care around us. So we just got incredibly lucky.
Oh, good. I think when you and I were talking last, I was mentioning that we were looking to see what we would need to do to this house to make it age in place ready.
Yes.
And, it's one of those where your eyes are bigger than your stomach. In other words, the amount of money it would take to get it to where I would want it to be, it cannot be justified. So we're back to the drawing board. Either
are you okay?
A little bit, yeah. You have to say, well, if you can't get it to where you want it, do you get it kind of close and suck it up, or do you just sell and go find something more appropriate? So
Yeah.
we haven't decided yet, but that's what we've come to. So,
well, that whole thing of having everything on a single level or living space, if you can adapt to that, that you can make something work. But if you
that
still
I can do. What
Yeah.
I don't have here in Denver, which might not be as relevant for you, but is a garage on the same level for the weather.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I'm missing, and going rats. But well, things can be figured out. It's just there's not an easy way to get a garage on this level. That's my hitch.
Yeah, and that's a big deal because I did live in Alaska in Anchorage for a while, and I know how important a garage is in the winter.
Yeah, more there than even here. But yeah. So it's interesting. But yeah, age in place is one of my favorite topics to talk with folks around, because people don't think about their housing situation.
They don't, and there's so few houses that are actually 100% accessible. I think they said the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard said 1%.
I'd be surprised if it was even one.
Yeah.
First of all, some of the characteristics, we have I'll come back to this. We have somebody going, we look like sisters. I was looking at our hair. Same hairstyle going. It's awesome.
And it's like red and blue and
yeah, same coloring. I think I'm a little older, but not by enough. But yes. So thanks, Nora, for chiming in. We feel like sisters, I think, at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I forgot my train of thought. No big deal.
We were talking about aging in place and and how little of the housing stock is accessible.
I think a lot of people look at accessibility elements and don't think of them as attractive. So I think the design world is sorry, I got another comment I'll share in a minute. The design world needs to catch up and make grab bars look more attractive and make handles more attractive, and a ramp. I tell you, you put a ramp on a house and all of a sudden you go, ooh, that doesn't look good. That kind of thing. We have a follow-up comment to the sister. So this is my sister saying, hey, wait a minute. So, so thanks, Jen. We can have honorary sisters, and I think Liz would make a lovely honorary member of our sisterhood here.
And by the way, I love your little baby Yoda.
She made that Yoda. We need to make that make that very public. She is an amazing artist.
Oh, very cool.
She does really cool things. So for our clients, each Christmas, part of our gift includes art, typically that she's created. So Baby Yoda is not going to happen because I think that was many hours for one. So and Jen wants to say that you are welcome to join the family. So next time you're in Denver, we'll just roll you in with the crew. So
sounds great.
Thanks, Jen. Awesome. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the design people wrapping their heads around this age and place issue to make it more attractive.
Yeah.
You don't want to walk into a home and go, oh, this is a home for a handicapped person. Which, by the way, is very horrible to say, and I'm sorry it came out of my mouth, but I've heard that from other folks.
The thing is, some of the accessibility stuff actually is great design, like the wider hallways, the wider door openings,
absolutely,
the more spacious, open floor plans.
But you take
that right there,
a wide bathroom and then add grab bars, and you've counteracted that beauty in most people's minds. So we need to integrate them, make them more decorative. I'm sure that there's ways to do it. I'm a CPA. I'm not an artist. Someone else gets to do this.
I'm married to an artist, and we went to a really interesting exhibition in Glasgow, of all places, and they were talking about accessibility and accessible design. And they pointed out that in Paris, originally, there was huge opposition, of course, to the idea of changing the metro maps, because everything was a black line, and it was each line was known by its two ends, essentially. Okay. And they finally got through the color-coded system.
Oh, like London.
Yeah, like every place now.
Like everywhere else, right?
Yeah, everywhere uses this. And it was initially meant to be an accessibility, to make it easier for people with low sight or people who didn't speak French to understand how the subway system works. And now it's just part of life. So I think you're right. I think there are solutions to this, and I think they will be widely adopted at some point. Let's just hope they're adopted soon enough for us.
I couldn't say it better myself. Yes. Well, I'm reminded of the curb cut effect. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh, I'm not sure about the effect. Tell me about that.
Well, the curb cut effect is back when cities all across the US made their downtowns, the curb was straight down, and then flat again. And so if you're in a wheelchair trying to cross the street, it's really a barrier. And so ADA came in, and now at every corner, it is smoothed out so that it's a ramp rather than a curb. Well, they discovered people trip less. There's fewer accidents because of that. If you've got a baby in a stroller, it's easier. It's just a nicer experience.
Yes.
And so, like you say, a lot of these adaptations are appealing. They're visually appealing, the wider this and that. So yes, come on, designers, help us out here. It's not going to be, that idea can't come from me. There's just no wiring for it, but I will support you once it's there. Absolutely, to make that happen. So like IKEA, like if you do an IKEA kitchen, you can clean so much easier. In fact, if you do it with the right flooring, you can hose down a room if you need to. Much better access than the nooks and crannies of and you can actually control height because of how it's designed. So whether they meant to or not, you can modify these things as a consumer. I can put in an IKEA bathroom, done it. It's not outside the realm of reality. Sorry, plumbers, they have really cheap and not very great, but it's doable. But you can adjust it to what you need and create knee holes for the wheelchairs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's things you can do now that look mainstream. Maybe that's the way to put it. Yeah. So, but I want a ramp that looks nice in the front of my house someday. I know that's going to be the right answer. And I haven't seen anything that makes me go, oh yeah, that's the way to do it. So
we're working on getting a 0-step entry, and we only have a couple of steps, but even a couple of steps can be a big. And I was talking to an accessibility expert, and he said that's the one thing that makes all the difference in the world, is having that 0-step entry. And he said it's not just for the old folks or people in wheelchairs. It's also for trying to get a big screen TV in the house or any that big
How about
thing.
All those Amazon deliveries you've had over the past year? Wouldn't that have been nicer if you didn't have to lug it up those steps, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What you run into there is climate. Here we have snow. And so a 0-step means your door is going right out into the snow.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some design challenges, maybe covered. Yeah. So it's multi-layered. You follow that little string back, like I said before, and you end up going, I don't even know, through the ramp. What to do with it? Oh, too funny. So do you have a favorite article you ever wrote that you remember fondly or totally regret, or just one that stands out that we should put out there for folks to go look at?
Oh man, I forget things as soon as they're out there. It's like people will say, "Oh, I love that article you wrote." It's like, what was that again?
Oh, good. Well, then your favorite is whatever you did most recently.
Exactly. And actually, I just wrote about the issue of the rent debt. So people that have not been able to pay their landlords and how they can get caught up or not. So that's what's been on my mind. And I'm also writing about like specific ages that you need to know for retirement, which age triggers what.
What are the triggers? Yeah, that's something we talk with clients too. Hey, we've got another comment coming in. Nora's got an idea. What about a retractable ramp? That could be a really great idea. I haven't seen one yet. Nora, get to work and get one of those designed for us. That would be cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually.
Yeah, that's really, and that could be very aesthetically appealing. So very cool. You never know where the ideas are going to come from. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Good. So it has been a pleasure chatting with you today, Liz. I don't want to, I know you're busy and keep you too much longer. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience?
No, it's just been wonderful to talk with you and to talk about, we kind of went all over the map, didn't we? That was fun.
By design, totally by design.
Yeah. And so I'm just going to come back to, if you are not, maybe even if you are a financial planner, it's so important to get that second pair of eyes on your plan.
Oh, that's a totally different topic of getting financial advisors to work with a financial advisor.
I do.
I do too.
Yeah.
I've had several over the years, different folks that I've crossed paths with, because the methods have changed. My situation has changed. It's not one and done, like it isn't one and done. So, Nora says she's going to have a retirement income by doing retractable ramps.
There you go.
They're planning for sure. That's fun.
I love that.
Well,
that's terrific.
Well, Liz, absolutely a delight to have you. Come back anytime. We do these on Fridays. If there's a topic you want to get out there and we can help get it out there for you, don't hesitate to let us know.
All right. Sounds great.
For those of you who've joined us today, thank you as always for joining us here with Money Mastery with Dee Dee and Innovative Financial. We are live on Fridays at noon, and we add more technical data every Tuesday, here to answer your questions and help you make the best of your personal finances. Bye-bye now.